Yeah, we've been seeing phenomenal follow through for Bitcoin so far. In fact, the whole market is doing very well. BTC dominance has taken a pretty sizable drop here. Nothing out of the ordinary of what we're expecting at all, and we'll dive into all of this as we go on in the video, because altcoin opportunities are obviously going to be, in my opinion, perhaps maybe more interesting than Bitcoin right now. So we'll take a look at that. Obviously, S&P 500 continues to lead these markets. It's sitting at roughly the same place, but the fact that it's even staying here, I think, is what's allowing investors to feel like they can take a little bit of risk. So we're going to be diving into a lot of what we're seeing right here. If you're excited for this video, do me a favor and smash up those likes as you are coming into the YouTube video right here. And of course, check out the phenomenal exchanges linked down here. You get insane bonuses when you start trading using these exchanges if you are interested. And of course, always be mindful of your own country's local laws and regulations. But bringing it back to the crypto charts here, Bitcoin specifically, just for now, obviously we were talking about this falling wedge pattern. Nobody wanted to talk about it, but of course on this YouTube channel we were very well aware of it, and we've seen quite a clear breakout now, right? Like, there's not really anything that's really up for debate anymore, in my opinion. And we're also, very, very cleanly following the kind of, breakout target that I had extrapolated, which puts Bitcoin at about, it depends on how you're looking at this, but for me the figure is actually 136k. So if I just go ahead and draw this properly using the linear chart, which, by the way, there's different schools of thought whether you use logarithmic or linear. Obviously logarithmic is better, but I'm using linear here. It's more universal. And 136k is going to be that speculative target for Bitcoin to get up to now if it kind of repeats the same kind of leg that it already did. We're already well on our way. This is the same line I've shown you for many weeks now, or at least a few weeks, and we are following through perfectly, so that's absolutely fantastic. But if we zoom in, I think the picture gets a little bit better. We ended up getting a pretty nice top right here at about 123k, which is fantastic. So congratulations to those of you that have not taken yourself out of the market up until this point, of course. And then we saw a kind of back test of this level. See, this was the only price discovery that Bitcoin ever had above $110,000, or above $112,000 more specifically. This level sits between 117 and 118.5, and it was the only consolidation that Bitcoin managed to pull off before continuing on upwards. And that's really important because the market ended up using this to, find more support again, and it's already on the run again, with Bitcoin dominance dropping harshly in response to this move as well, which is something that we're going to break down in just a minute or two. But the reason I think this is important is, first of all, we get to kind of draw a support level that looks something like this. I'm not using, obviously like normal horizontal lines, because I don't think that we should use them right now. I think we're talking about general stuff, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's even better that we didn't actually fully use this support level. We actually fell a little bit below it. Okay, this was going to be a somewhat obvious place for people to kind of start setting long orders here, or start setting buy orders in the market. And of course, these stop losses then would have been hit before the market continues going up. So this is just how the market cleanses itself. It sucks. It's a scam market in that sense, and we're very well aware of it, but it's the reality, and I'm not going to dive into how terrible it is. I'm just going to tell you about the fact that it's happening, and it's clearly helped pave the way for better price action moving forward. Okay, you've got less longs in the market, so it's just easier to trap more longs in the market again later on, right? That's how this works. So now, bringing it onto Bitcoin dominance, if we look at this on a very small time frame, I mean, this, recent pump here is what really set Bitcoin dominance to drop lower. Now, let's first keep things in perspective, and I have to do this with altcoin analysis because you guys in altcoins are notoriously fucking stupid. Don't be that way. If that's you, first of all, you're probably not even on this channel, but if somehow that is you and you're on this channel, don't be that way. Keep yourself sensible, sane, intelligent with what you're doing in your analysis, instead of being a stupid degenerate like the rest of the market. Okay, you're not going to make money if you're falling into those camps. This is something that we've seen on Bitcoin's dominance now quite a few times since the bottom. Okay, we've gotten regular drops on Bitcoin's dominance. This was a 6.4%. Here's another 7%. Here's another 5.2. Here's a big one, 11.2. Here's a big one, 7%. Nothing crazy about that. Recently, very recently, only in May, we had a 5.6%, and so far it's only a 4.4. So clearly a little bit more room to go if we're going to be doing something similar to what happened previously, where Bitcoin dominance ends up falling by about, 7%, 6%, we've got a little bit more to go, which means even more sunshine for altcoins. And that's conservative, because you might have an opinion here which says that actually it's alt season now, Bitcoin broke out, Bitcoin consolidated again for a 7-month period before breaking out. This time is, we've got Trump, we've got, a lot of mixed opinions on that one right now, but clearly better for the economy than puppets like Kamala. So definitely good for us in these markets. And we've got a lot of things that are going for us really, really well right now that I think is going to push people over the edge and make them feel like this is actually alt season. I do not agree with that. I don't think we're there yet. To be honest, it's not easy to tell when you enter alt season, right? Ultimately, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, shit, Bitcoin dominance dropped by a lot and it doesn't look like it's going back up, right? That's how you know you're in alt season, but that's not very helpful, right? By that point, you've already dropped by 10, 15% on Bitcoin dominance, right? So, it's not useful to know it that late. But ultimately, if you're premature, then, any of these little drops that we've already discussed, they're going to really mess with you, right? Like if you're kind of jumping the gun to this shit, because we've seen this so many times, right? We've seen Bitcoin dominance drop down by minor amounts so many times, even 10, 11%, which is fairly significant. Obviously right after Trump got elected, right? So, we've seen this before. A lot of people were harking on the altcoin season bandwagon at those points, right? And obviously they've been underwater on their altcoins all this time because naturally, Bitcoin kept going up, but these altcoins, they're up now. Yes, I get it, but compared to what, right? Like you'd still be better off if you were in Bitcoin in most cases. There are exceptions. We were talking about XRP a lot on this YouTube channel and how XRP is probably a really spicy coin to be in right now. And obviously it's just pumped above $3 here, so no surprises whatsoever. Something that we've been talking about as well on Levex. If you are signed up using this link, you're going to be able to see our exclusive chart setup updates as well from the team on coins such as XRP. So there are exceptions, but for the most part, if you were holding altcoins, you got hit really hard during this period of time. And that's not to say that, because of that, we should act like alt season's never coming. That's also the wrong perspective. If you're in either of these camps, you're being too emotional. Okay, let's be very, very clear. You're being too emotional about it. The markets are not that emotional. Well, they certainly are emotional, but in order for you to make money, those strategies are not emotional. And so we need to keep that out of our minds, right? For me, alt season, it's going to be something that probably gets triggered pretty quickly. I think probably a little bit similar to the way that we had a top over here and then a big drop, or even this wick right here. But, for the most part, we haven't actually even seen mainstream coverage of this Bitcoin move, right? Like, there's been so much shit going on with news, with social media over the last weeks and months since Trump took office. It's just been so chaotic. And I don't think, and you'll probably agree with me on this, I don't think that we've seen very much of Bitcoin in the headlines at all, right? And to me, that's a prerequisite for alts to have a significant altcoin season, okay? We need Bitcoin to start getting a little bit of mainstream attention because that's what allows the piggybacking for altcoins later on. I don't think it's necessary. You certainly don't need it, but this is kind of how it's gone every time I've seen it happen before. And really, another way of saying this, and I firmly stand by what I'm about to say here, is that I don't think Bitcoin's done anything impressive enough yet. That's the bottom line, right? Ultimately, we're going to see a shitload of money going into altcoins. We're already seeing it, right? We're already seeing a lot of money going into altcoins, but we're going to see a shitload of money going into altcoins when Bitcoin does something really impressive. And we've seen the start of that, right? Like if we measure this just kind of from early July to, now mid-July, the total 3 market cap of everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum is up by 18%. So it's been a nice move, but like nothing groundbreaking, right? We haven't broken any highs. We haven't, altcoins are known for doing the 10x's, the crazy shit. This is 18%, you know what I mean? So nothing that crazy yet, not even like a 2x, 3x, I think is pretty reasonable even for this market cycle. So, we haven't seen any of that significant stuff happening yet. And I think the reason we haven't seen it happening yet is because Bitcoin itself hasn't done anything extremely impressive yet. In fact, if you measure Bitcoin against, the dollar weighted for inflation, right? If you measure Bitcoin against the dollar adjusted for inflation, or even other currencies like the Swiss franc or whatever. I'm not, don't quote me on that one, but you are going to see that Bitcoin's price action is not as impressive as it looks on paper right now. So I think that's really important, and that brings us back to the Bitcoin analysis here, which is, for me, we're in the middle of price discovery right now, obviously, because we've never been in this price zone, in these price zones before, but we're doing pretty well, right? Like, if we're able to get higher, if we're able to especially sweep this high at 123, then sky's the limit. You pick your target, right? 130, 125, 140, whatever you like. It's probably going to run quite hard because, who's selling up here ultimately is the question, right? We had, 7 months of uncertain retail and institutions, but probably more so retail, slowly drip feeding their Bitcoins into the hands of people that are much more patient than them. And those patient people are not going to sell after 7 months of consolidation on a 10% pump. You know what I mean? Like, it's not significant enough to warrant big selling action yet, in my opinion. Unless this was a completely fake move and it was a completely scam pump, and which can happen, right? Like, it's Bitcoin and it totally makes sense if that happens. Unless that's what we're seeing, I don't think we're going to be seeing any big selling action happen now. And I obviously don't think that that's what we're in right now, because the rest of the world is also going up with a shitload of green everywhere in traditional finance across the rest of crypto and so on and so forth. So I don't think we have any reason to believe that this is a scam pump right now. And so I certainly think that, this can get a lot higher for Bitcoin. And, when this thing gets up to, well, it might not, but if it does get up to something like 150 or whatever, that's going to really start grabbing a lot of headlines. And I think it's going to make it a lot more appealing to be in these altcoins, because obviously you're going to have so much money parked up in Bitcoin, but that money is going to try and get, like, 120 to 150 is not that crazy, right? Like, if you're putting $100,000 in at 120 and you're exiting at 150, you're not walking away with that much exit. You're certainly not multiplying your money at all, so it's really not the place that you want to be if you're looking for aggressive capital growth, right? But it's where you start, and that's really important, that where you start angle, because when that money starts flowing out of Bitcoin and into other coins, again, that's Bitcoin dominance. That's what you're seeing here, and we haven't seen the big drops that we actually expect during alt seasons, right? The kind of drops that we're looking for are gargantuan, right? What we have right now, it's nothing. It's not even a scratch, right? What we've gotten previously during real alt seasons, right? This was, the alt season that started right at the end of the bull market, which, by the way, these alt seasons, you might get a couple during the bull market, the bull cycle, but usually the best one happens at the end. We're talking about incredible drops here. I mean, down 35 in percentage points here, 50% in relative terms, and then 2021, exactly the same thing again, So we're looking for much, much bigger drops on Bitcoin's dominance. And obviously, as those drops are happening, that's where all the gains are for altcoins. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, you stay bullish for a little bit, afterwards as well. You get really, really good opportunities in altcoins as well. So I think that's definitely worth keeping in mind. Let's take a quick look at Solana here. It's finally starting to get somewhere. It's kind of reaching the top of this resistance zone, which is interesting, right? Because Solana is a very loved coin, yet, it's not at all-time highs. It's not above any, significant resistance level yet. It's basically just reaching a box right now. I'd probably say that it's around here, so about 180 probably, where some big bull traders are probably going to be looking to go short on Solana. I don't know if I would take that position right here, but it's probably smart, all things considered. I just don't like going short, obviously, in bull markets. I don't think that's particularly smart. You want to be buying in bull markets, not really selling typically, but each to their own, of course. But that's Solana. They're finally getting somewhere a little bit interesting. Here is Cardano, obviously its bigger brother that has fallen into irrelevancy, or irrelevance here, is sitting at resistance right now. And it's a pretty important resistance level. If it can get above this resistance level, it's probably going to go pretty crazy. Obviously, one of the things that's notable about Cardano, including a few other coins that we're talking about today, is the fact that it is, very U.S. compliant, right? I mean, Charles Hoskinson, I'm pretty sure himself has been in the White House, who is, if you don't know, the creator of Cardano. Pardon me, he's been in the White House himself, and so there is a presence there, and it's looking good, right? Same for XRP, which of course is looking fantastic. Look, the world belongs to America again. It never really stopped belonging to America. You know, but obviously under Biden, things took a little bit of a tumble. Trump's back in charge, and the world is bowing to America, right? These coins that have a heavy American presence are doing incredibly well, but across the board, they're doing well. I mean, here's Binance Coin, you know, now sitting above $700 as well, and a lot of these coins are just on the cusp of a breakout right now. So, you know, this is definitely a chance for Bitcoin's dominance to drop significantly lower. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's definitely a chance for that to happen at this stage, because if these coins can get above these resistance levels, again, there's not really going to be anybody left to sell, you know, because, I mean, why would you sell at the first, you know, like you want a bigger breakout before you start selling, right? And market supply and demand dynamics are going to prove that to us. So, and they've proven it to us many times already. So, you know, I think that's well worth keeping in mind. Obviously, a lot of other coins doing interesting stuff. You guys know about TRX, that I told you about, my phenomenal generational entry on TRX. I can't even find it on the chart anymore. It was probably like way down here or something silly. You know, so obviously TRX looking pretty good, sitting at 30 cents right now. Look, altcoins are doing well. Obviously still, I believe, at the mercy of Bitcoin, and I still think Bitcoin's going to be looking to kind of rip up. Now, if Bitcoin really does rip up, if it breaks above 123 and goes, you know, kind of crazy above 130 and so on, and it continues to produce, you know, really quick aggressive price action, which I really think is what's going to happen, then I don't think Bitcoin's dominance is going to stay low. I think Bitcoin is going to drag its dominance up with it. Ultimately, you know, we're more interested in altcoins when Bitcoin is boring. But if Bitcoin is no longer boring, for example, if it's pumping by 10% every week, then it's going to be a lot harder to be in altcoins because you're already making money in Bitcoin. You don't need to risk too much money. Like I said, this balance will shift throughout the market cycle, and especially at the end of the market cycle. But for the most part, this is kind of how I've known Bitcoin to behave with its dominance, and it could definitely be changing now, but I haven't seen any indication of it. Everybody that tells me it's changing seems to be stupid and unable to call the right moves in the market, so I'm not really going to side with them anyway. But ladies and gents, I think that's pretty much wrapping this up. I think the only other thing I want to talk about is going to be the S&P 500, because, you know, it's still looking really good. It's tested the downside here, it's tested the upside, it's consolidating, it's in neutral territory, but inside of a bullish trend, which already always is going to predispose it to continue to move up here. So, you know, we could be seeing 65. I don't know. Obviously, these levels are going to get silly, right? Especially if you're a forever bear. I know there's a lot of forever bears that like watching this channel. You tend to be very intelligent.